Hey, what's up guys, it's Chase, and welcome to another exciting episode of the ELAV8 podcast. Today, Sam and I cover a myriad of topics ranging from the fourth turning, as well as covering what is happening in the media, what to trust from the left or right, and how do we navigate a world where memes are fundamentally changing the landscape of how we receive information.
I genuinely believe that memes are the most dangerous thing to society that's ever been created, in our current form. And you know, people ask me this all the time. It's like, why? Like, memes are funny, and they get a little like angry when I say this, because I will admit it's a bold claim, and I know I'm a broken record on this idea, but like George Orwell, Newspeak, that's what memes are. It's like, you are creating the meme. Think about it. Are you the person that's going in and creating this art? Because I do respect the artistic nature of memes. What I'm simply saying is, you're not the one that's creating it. You're just regurgitating it and putting it into the public consciousness, almost like a virus, to limit thought. You're not creating thought. You're passing along thoughts that are not your own. You're just agreeing to it.
What is up? For the ELAV8 world, I'm Sam. Got Jace here. We're ready to dive in deep into the summertime. We'll just call them blues, man. I think like there's something in the air. I'm just gonna go ahead and like put a name on it. Like, it feels like there's something in the air these days. Like, there's just something weird. It's been off the last few weeks. I don't know what it is. Are you sensing that?
Yeah, man. I'll admit, like, I'm feeling the blues big time. I have friends getting sick, and it's just not great. And I feel like it's happening everywhere.
I had a close family member, close friend just died out of nowhere of cancer. And I've just been seeing like all kinds. Another family member has a thing going on. There's stuff everywhere. And I'm like, what is going on? Is this just a thing that's going on, or is there something larger going on? I don't know.
Dude, first and foremost, I'm so sorry that happened. I didn't know that you lost a family member. So
no, I
my
didn't lose a family member, close friend of theirs. But like, it's okay. But it's just one of those things where it's just like, how you just notice sometimes there's just like a lot of like, wow, what is just one thing after another here? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fortuitous. Like, we're entering into the fourth turning right now, if you believe in that kind of stuff. If you read that book, like, we're in the let's pause for the people out there who don't know what the fourth turning is.
Okay, I'm excited.
Now, are we good? So I guess we found our lane here. So now we're gonna go. We're talking about the fourth turning, and is this a real thing? And which version is it? Are we talking about the Steve Bannon version? Are we talking about the Kali Yuga version, the Indian version? Which version of the fourth turning are we dealing with?
I'm talking about the book, The Fourth Turning.
All right.
Who's the author of that? Was it? I can't remember who the author was, but I mean, essentially the premise is that history repeats itself in 80-year cycles, and we're at the tail end of our 20. So there's four. What is it? It's 4 20-year cycles, or 4 20-year like divisions, right? And the first one is like, Renaissance period. The second one is like the awakening. The third part is the downfall, and the fourth is crisis, right? And this, it's called seculums, and we're in the fourth seculum right now of what people are calling the crisis of this turning and the fourth turning.
Well, so that's one version of it, right? So that's one version. I've heard there's another version that is summed up by, I think it's like, and we'll apologize, lady, for the gender side of this, but it's strong men make good times. Good times make, or hard times make strong men make good times make weak men make hard times.
Correct. Yes, that's basically what the fourth turning is. That whole idea of it is that. And right now, we're in like, it's time to step up within society, or we can risk losing it all. I mean, we're at the precipice of World War III, and I know people are tired of hearing about it, so let's go deeper on why. I mean, do you see what happened literally today with Iran claiming? Well, Iran claims Israel hasn't taken responsibility for it yet, but Iran's claiming that, the leader of Hamas was killed in Tehran and that Israel's behind it. And that happened today. And Iran is going to, respond. They haven't said how yet, but they're going to respond with, some pretty vigorous force. And, if that happens, all bets are off because, Iran is deep relationships with the BRICS nations. I'm sure you're aware of, and Israel is an ally to us and to the West in itself. So like it's like the Balkans in World War I all over again. And like, is the head of Hamas going to be Franz Ferdinand? Like, is that? I mean, that's where we're at today. I mean, history repeats itself. I mean, maybe that's where we're at.
Well, but look, the truth of the matter is that I think there'd be a number of incidents along the way over the last few months. There'd be a numerous Franz Ferdinands, I would say.
But there has been. There's been multitude of Franz Ferdinands. So we had the president of Iran that died mysteriously in a helicopter crash. Right? We've had multiple targets taken out. I'm saying targets. I shouldn't say that. They're people. There's been multiple people taken out from Israel over the last few days. I mean, the Palestinian conflict, right, no matter which side you fall on, is a major divisive force within society today. Either, you're pro or against, but, universally across the globe, people are taking sides. And because of that, it is yielding a lot of death. And because of that, I mean, we could that could be the spark that throws us into a global conflict.
Could be. However, I would say that whatever's been going on, I'm going to throw out a theory. Let's just tell me whether I'm crazy or not. So I remember looking back when COVID first started, right? And what sort of happened immediately around all of that, right? So virus comes out of China, lockdowns happen, lots of reshuffling. And what I also noticed was that there was some immediate teaming up and things going on around oil. And then shortly thereafter, the Ukraine war starts. So I would posit that everything we're seeing right now kicked off on COVID. When COVID started.
I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, according to the theory of, the fourth turning and the seculum we're in, I mean, the height of it is, from 2008 to now, right? 2008 to now, right? So 2008 to 2028 is supposedly the seculum of the fourth turning that we're currently in.
And then what happens, just so we know, after the fourth turning? So what do we get after that?
It resets, man. We go back to prosperity, right? Supposedly,
so it kicks off the dawn of a new era, and so all we got to do is we got to make it 3 years.
We just got to make it. Well, I mean, on average, right? We got to supposedly we make it 3 years. We're good, but I mean, I don't know, dude. What's happening right now in the world it's scary. I mean, Dr. Strangelove was right. That movie was so dead on.
Oh, that was a documentary.
That was a documentary, yeah. And that's where we're at. It only takes one crazy person to push a button and wipe humanity off the face of the planet.
Well, there's a lot of crazy people. And actually, this is a worthwhile topic, right? So I happened to be watching John Oliver yesterday, who is largely, and I would say in many cases, justifiably pointing out Israeli abuses on the Palestinian and making a case for whether or not that's apartheid. And look, I happen to be very pro-Israel, but I can also acknowledge when certain things are coming up that are oh yeah, no, that doesn't look good. That's not a good look. That's bad, right? That's legitimately bad the way this looks. But here's the thing. So you can simultaneously, but the same thing could be said about things in the U.S. And you could make a lot of points against the U.S. that are very negative, right? In terms of the way that you can portray a country's actions, right? So this is all a means of saying many of these things are horrific the way they're being presented. However, the question I simply ask is, okay, so you can be self-critique, you can view your side as negative, right? But what are we comparing against, right? What is this relative to? Because I think the only real way to determine, first off, my first question would be, do we think any of the actors in any of these environments are perfect?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Like, no one's perfect.
So
no.
we've settled on, we can start with Jesus's rule of essentially, he who has not sinned casts the first stone, and no one's throwing, right? So nobody's perfect here, right? So that's been taken off the thing. So then how do you evaluate the relative purity and goodness of an actor in a world war scenario, right? And the various actors, right, who point out the other side's flaws. How do you decide who the good guys are, I guess, is my question.
Well, that's just it, man. There really is no good guy, because we're all the hero of our own story. At the end of the day, like, we're the protagonist, and everybody believes they're the protagonist. And I love that NPC meme is like, that person believes they're the protagonist. But in reality, like, no, that's it. Our reality is the reality we create for ourselves. And so it's like, who is the good guy? Who is the bad guy? And there's so many either-or-isms that are happening right now. You have to either be this way or you have to be this way, right? And it's happening within American politics. You're either a liberal or you're not, right? You're a conservative. What happened to being able to thread the needle? And when you try to do that, you're demonized. It's like, oh, you're not fully on my side. And
what happens when you refuse to choose the left-right paradigm, the either-or? So for me, right, I purposely read a lot of like mainstream media and a lot of alternative media. I read conservative heavy stuff and liberal leaning stuff. Because for me, I want to understand every point of view, and then I want to analyze each of the arguments and then determine the relative truth within each of them. And that's how I sort of figure out where I land on a lot of things.
Oh man, you just got me. You got me thinking. But what you're saying, right? I do agree with, and I used to be like a maximalist of like watching both like Fox News and CNN, literally just like flipping between them and having a great time and texting my friends. It's like, dude, they're saying this on Fox, but they're saying this on CNN. And it was so crazy seeing the dichotomy happening across, both networks and how like divisive and different they were. And what I've come to realize is like, even that's the wrong strategy, because the propaganda machine has just been dialed up on both sides, right? Globally. And there's like, you don't have a chance. No one has a chance. Like, I'll give you an example, right? And I really want to tap into your mind on this and hear your thoughts. Because once again, for anyone that's listening, a few viewers, like, you should know by now that both Sam and I are not really deterministic on either political side. We're just like studying the landscape. But there's one thing that really stuck out to me, right? And it was the Kamala Harris border czar thing that's going on right now. Is she the border czar or is she not the border czar, right? Like, that's the big debate that's happening. And I decided to do my own research, and I went to the U.S. White House government press releases, right? The press releases from the White House. And I read through them because I was like, I can't stand it. I need to know what actually happened, right? And Joe Biden did come out and say that Kamala Harris is responsible for the border.
Wait, do
right?
people think she wasn't?
Oh my God, dude, right now, all over MSNBC, CNN, and all these other networks, right? And by the way, I get it. I'm not going to like demonize them, but they're trying to frame it as she was never the border czar, that it was never said. It was never determined.
She definitely was. I remember when they anyway, I didn't even realize that was the thing. So anyway, keep going. Sorry.
So that's happening, right? That is happening right now, and they're trying to cover it up. So to be fair, I have to give another example, right? But like, if I'm going to give an example on the left, I have to give an example on the right. We're fair here on ELAV8, right? Like, people are trying to say what happened on January 6th was just a tourist visit, right? And to a degree, I can point at plenty of examples where, guards did let people in. They said wave them in. They got to like do their thing. But if you watch the entire broadcast that everybody else watched, there's actual footage of people beating police officers with
tourist visit. What?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, so that's like the biggest thing. So look, I love him or hate him, right? I love watching Tucker Carlson. Like that guy puts on something, I'll watch it, and I'll just like I'll be like, dude, is this guy out of his mind? Or at the end of it, was like, oh, that's pretty smart. Whatever. I go back and forth on the guy, and he did a whole special on January 6th.
The conservative John Oliver or the conservative Jon Stewart, they're mirror images. Both sides have them, right? So, and if you love one, you probably hate the other. And for me, I'm like. No, I just know which language you're speaking. You're speaking the conservative dialect, or you're speaking the liberal dialect.
So, but I'll give you two like very visceral examples, right? Lectern guy. Remember the guy that was like photographed carrying a lectern, like Nancy Pelosi's Speaker of the House lectern, right? When he was, inside the Capitol, like that dude's life was ruined. For a multitude of,
or the shaman guy, the guy with the horns. That guy was famous.
Oh, dude. Yeah. That guy was real famous. I was it Angelini? I can't remember. I think his name's Martin Angelini or whatever. Yeah. But like those people, especially the shaman guy, he was guided into the chambers. Like he was. Like that's on video. Like got it. Like, and I do think that guy got the short end of the stick. Even though he did like trespass, I don't think they should have kept him in prison for so long.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Let's be rational about this, right?
I'm here, man. Let's hear it.
Let's just be rational.
I'm rational.
Take all the politics out. Just remove everything from the city. Take all the personalities out. Let's just break down the events that happened. A group of people without permission to be in the Capitol building showed up on the lawn elsewhere at a political rally in one place. Listened to a political candidate speech from there. Proceeded to go to a nation's Capitol building, forced entry into it.
Breaking glass,
forced entry while the leaders of the country were currently in that building. Let's just pause right there and ask, okay, so things happen, things transpire after. Is anyone surprised that many of those people are in prison?
So this is the point I'm trying to make, right? Is that to go back to the source of the argument, because I agree with what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with you. Is pundits on both sides are trying to change history, right? Like we're literally in 1984 and both parties are at play. There is no good anymore in the media. There is no innocence in the media anymore. And that's what I'm trying to say. It's like, you're like, hey, I'm going to all these news sites and I'm trying to like gather it all. I'm like, bro, like,
here's the
crazy.
Fascinating thing actually is to go watch the memes that your friends are sharing on Facebook, which just tells them how they're being programmed through which part of the matrix, right? So, I've got a bunch of liberal friends who are like, they all post me like, oh, here's the response to the French opening ceremony, you idiot conservatives. This was not the Last Supper. This was this thing. See, look how dumb you are. And what's the truth is, like, when I grew up, the Olympic ceremonies used to be like, oh, here's this person carrying a torch and doing this thing, right? We're a long way from that. Whatever you want to call that, I'm like, I don't know how we got here. So maybe they need to look at, like, what the purpose of the opening ceremony is. I don't really care whether it has to do with religion or not. But what I'm simply pointing out is, like, people are justifying whatever was happening in the beginning as if that was normal and the way it always has been. And it was definitely not.
Yeah, but just like a drug addict, man, we're addicted to shock value. And we're looking to just bump it up another notch every single time. Because what the ceremony is really saying to you is, like, how can we get the most engagement possible? And the best way to do that is to piss you off. Right? You
remember though when it was Muhammad Ali? Like, just like lighting the torch?
Dude. And was that in Atlanta? I think that was Atlanta.
I don't remember where it was, but I do remember that's what it kind of, like, they used to try to go for moments like that. Do we feel like we did that this year?
Nah, not at all. No, dude, but here's the thing. I didn't watch the ceremony because, like, I knew.
I didn't either. I was like, no, why were you going to do that yourself?
I'll watch it later. But I mean, like, but that's the reality. Is like we're conditioned programmers, because that's what they are. They're programmers, right? Not like coding, but they're programmers to try to shock you enough so you'll talk about it in social media.
Well,
to drive
but that's
more
the whole
viewership.
thing. So the response to that is what's actually interesting. So I don't care about the ceremony. You want to see a really weird one? Go back like 2 years ago to the Commonwealth Games, where people are bowing in front of a robotic bowl, like with people trying to give it offerings. That's even weirder. However,
How paganistic.
a lot of it. Well, this one was too. When you look at it, it's like no, that wasn't Jesus. That was the Roman god Dionysus. Actually,
it was Dionysus.
Idiot conservatives. Yeah. And it's like, actually, what are we doing here? Why is there anything related to that going on?
Yeah. So I will say this. Like, so I love Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Right. I would argue for that, for the, whoever did this. If it wasn't in Paris, right? It was in Paris, not Greece. So like that whole theme was crazy to me. Now the Marie Antoinette, the headless woman, and like them like playing like the major metal concert, I thought that was awesome because that was on brand. I was like, that's cool.
But here's the
thing,
that's
artistic.
Though, but like, is that like? So let's just say we're a long way away from like like that's not what we're about anymore. Like that's just gone, right? So, and I think so when you look at like when the right freaks out, that's what they're freaking out over is like we're a long way from like family values, and so meanwhile the left is like, oh, you like idiot prudes, but it's so obvious what the response is going to be from both sides, and it's so predictable. And then it's even more fascinating how people respond to the outrage now on both sides so tactically, and how they're being fed the same memes. Like there's a meme factory coming from the political sides of both sides, and it's just people competing with each other's press releases, right? And then you can tell exactly who somebody is based on the stuff they're sharing, which is just fascinating to me.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've heard me talk about this. Actually, this was in our Facebook days, because you and I would talk on Facebook a lot. Do you remember this? Like during like the COVID lockdowns and stuff. I genuinely believe that memes are the most dangerous thing to society that's ever been created in our current form. And people ask me this all the time. It's like, why? Like, memes are funny, and they get a little like angry when I say this, because I will admit it's a bold claim, and I know I'm a broken record on this idea, but like George Orwell, Newspeak, that's what memes are. It's like you are creating the meme. Think about it. Are you the person that's going in and creating this art? Because I do respect the artistic nature of memes. What I'm simply saying is you're not the one that's creating it. You're just regurgitating it and putting it into the public consciousness, almost like a virus, to limit thought. You're not creating thought. You're passing along thoughts that are not your own. You're just agreeing to it. And I feel that as people remove themselves from the creativity process and they continue to just pass along others' ideas, it just further divides our society and silos it.
Yes. Agree. They're magnificent propaganda matrix, right? So like it's just and also they're like reusable, right? You're just going to change the thing on it. So it's like a reusable propaganda matrix that people can kind of glom onto, and it's just I don't know. But here my only question, right, is like I feel like I'm now the cockroach that is becoming resistant to the poison again. And I'm wondering how long everyone else, because it used to bother me being in the echo chamber. Now I'm so used to being in the echo chamber that you're like, wow, this is a really interesting part of the prison. Oh, look what they're doing here. This is how this breaks down. That's fascinating. Why? Oh, and this is how they're programming the other inmates. Look at that. Oh, that's really transparently like obvious and dumb. Like it's fascinating.
But they're coming at you specifically a different way. They're coming at you with AI and algorithms and how you're searching and like driving like. And by the way, they're going to get me. They're going to get you. Ultimately, they'll get everyone.
So, because here's the other thing, right? So if you break down, you follow the money train on both sides, right? So, and actually, I've kind of figured out the money train on the Trump JD Vance side, which is like, if you look at the Project 2020, so JD Vance is funded by Peter Thiel, like that's been pretty well established. And if you go deeper than that, the Project 2025 initiative is funded by the Heritage Foundation, which is also coordinated by the Koch brothers, right? So if you have to look at the money and how all of that is being set up, you can get the conservative agenda, and that's just like, oh, okay, well, that's the funding side. So you now kind of know that's that camp, right? And they're putting a lot of money into that side of propaganda, and they keep getting very angry at the Soros side. So you've got to assume that in some way the Soros side is backing the left, right? So, from there, you got the Koch brothers versus Soros is kind of what I can...
I was literally about to say that. You took the words right out of my mouth. And I came to this conclusion, it wasn't even that long ago. It might have been like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I realized that you're right, that Soros is left, Koch is right. It's just like, is it really that simple? Is that where we're at today?
I mean, when it comes to... I don't think it's that simple because the people who really run things are not in the news. However, you can use those boogeymen as a means of like simplifying the left-right paradigm, right? That's in control at the moment, that is manufacturing the propaganda.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you a question, and it's a question I ask one of my really good friends all the time, and like he's deep into like they just want to control us, and he won't even tell me who they is. He just keeps on saying that. And I always come back to, and this is an open question, and if you're listening to this, please leave a comment, because I've always tried to come back to it. And this is me being naive. I'll admit flat out, this is me being naive. It's like, why? Like, why do you want that control? Like, let's say you're this big, bad boogeyman that's hiding in the dark, in the shadows, and you're nudging society in all these directions. Why? What's the end goal?
So my personal point of view, and maybe it's naive, I don't know, I could be wrong, is I don't believe that there's any one set of people who's like in control. I believe that there is, I believe there are moneyed interests and there are people interests, and there is good and bad within all things, and sometimes the bad inclination moves ahead and sometimes the good inclination moves ahead. However, I do believe that things are very much funded. Right. And there's a war of like funding and money going on and interest below the surface that certainly do. And that certainly go. And I think I wonder about this. I don't know the answers, obviously. But what I would simply throw out there is you can pretty much trace it to rich people propagating their own self-interest in some way, or enlarging their empires, right? So you've amassed a certain... So why? The answer would be why? Well, because they can go from billionaire to trillionaire. Because they can go from I own 3 islands to 7 islands, because I want this much more control and I don't really care what the consequences are for people I've never met, and I think it can be boiled down as simply into, instead of, imagine a world, and it's very similar. You ever see the movie Network?
Wait, what movie is this? Is this the News Network movie?
From the 70s, with Mad as Hell and I'm Not Going to Take It Anymore.
I need to watch this.
You got to watch this movie. So it's from the 70s, all-time great movie, Paddock Chayefsky. But like, there's this scene in it, with Ned Beatty, the Ned Beatty scene. I'm not going to ruin it for you. Watch the Ned Beatty scene. It kind of sums this up. But like, my viewpoint is, a lot of what we see in the political side is just theater, versus like what's really going on, which selfish people expanding their empires at the expense of everyday people who believe what they read.
I mean, that's another subject all in itself in entirety. So, like, question, like, what is the status of society today and their ability to understand that what happens on television isn't real? Like, where are we at with that? Is it getting better? Because, like, I have hope with, like, Gen Z and, like, subliminal advertising, and, like, they can sniff it out. Like, they don't want to be sold to. Because I work in this field, right? I work in influencer marketing, and I feel like that's a cultural indicator of, like, the next generation. It's like, what will work, won't work, right? And it's really interesting to see how they respond to, like, blatant advertising, because that's what politics is. It's advertising, and it's trying to manipulate you into buying into a system.
I think they're immune to some of it, I think they are completely susceptible to the more subtle forms of influencer advertising, right? And
What
here,
do you mean?
I'll give you a perfect example. They're so, like, when we did the VidCon show a couple years ago, right? And walked out there and, you know, we had our booth. And I was just sitting around looking at this and I was like, oh, VidCon, owned by Paramount or whatever, or 20th Century, whichever one it was.
Oh, no, you know, you're right. Nailed it.
Owned all of this stuff, has tricked unsuspecting influencers. So what they did, and what good corporations or smart corporations do, is they pay off the influencers who have the validated authenticity over Gen Z, and they hook them in. And they hook them into buying the dream, right? So you want to be just like me on the influencer side. So they're paid off in some way. So they're funding the lottery winners, who then feed the other lottery winners, who all show up to this conference and are then completely susceptible to all of the branding, therefore, at this conference. And think about the amount of people outside desperately trying to get in because they want to be an influencer who can take the deals that are being offered by the companies at that conference. But it has nothing to do with learning how to be a content creator at VidCon anymore. And that is where Gen Z is totally susceptible. The way we were susceptible to growing up and showing up to the movie theater, believing that, like, oh yeah, we could be one of those people doing that thing, right? And then the amount of people that move out to Los Angeles or get fed into the, like,
the meat grinder,
the film school industrial complex, or acting school, or all of these things, and you get fed into that meat grinder. Well, that meat grinder is now called YouTube, and it's exponentially bigger, and it has its own. And Gen Z is as susceptible to that as we were to the film school industrial complex.
Oh, that was really succinct. Thank you for that. Just a little side note. I moved out to Los Angeles to be an actor, and then I realized I didn't want to be poor. So that was like, that was like so fast. Like Sam, that was like I'm not doing that. No, this is awful.
Yeah.
And you know, it's really weird, right? Did you ever act? Did you ever do this?
Oh God, no. I wanted to be behind the camera, right? So I wanted to be a director. And so, like, it's, but like you know, it's just, I actually have this theory. So we'll go deeper, which is, pimps and prostitutes, right? So, and basically, if you are on the artistic side, you are a prostitute in some way, and this could be an actor, this could be a director, this could be any kind of thing, but you're a prostitute in some way because you're hoping somebody's going to finance your shit, and so you're hoping that somebody's going to recognize your talent and fund it. And that's usually some sort of pimp, right? Who's on the other side, studio executive, whatever that is, who's got the means, right? And they're collecting their essentially prostitutes. And that's how the whole thing works.
Yeah. Huh. I mean, I will say this, all right? And like going off on your analogy, because I did kind of feel that way going into auditions. And I wish you did it just once, you know, and you went on an audition.
Auditions. I was on the other side, so I casted things, and it's amazing how many people will show up for an audition for an independent film that is largely unpaid, and then come in and like think that the person who with minimal experience casting it, or the director, like the amount of things they'll do to get their big break part in some half-assed student short is fascinating.
Dude, but like the weirdest part for me, right, was going into a room and literally seeing so many people that looked exactly like me. Like, it's like, wow, you're the same height. Wow, we have the same haircut. Wow, it's just like, we are the exact same. And I hated that feeling. It's like, because the reason I wanted to be an actor is because I didn't want to be myself. I was like, I want to be something else. I want to like, you know, go into a different mindset, you know, and I thought it'd be cool because I had this major problem, like, being myself growing up because I always thought I wasn't cool, right? And I was like, well, if I can be, like, the cool action star, like, maybe I'll like myself more, right? I worked on myself, though, audience. Like, I'm good now. All right, I did all the healing that I need to do. Yeah, it's not a pity session. But the point being is, like, going off what you're talking about is, like, dude, that's what I felt like. I just felt like an object, right? Going into trying to please someone so I could get validation or money or fame. And I was like, this is a terrible feeling. I'm going to go to the other side of the camera. And that's when I got into production. And I was like, this is so much better. This is so much better.
I was even dumber because I was just naive, right? I just was like, I just wanted to make cool things. I had no interest in the business side of it whatsoever. I literally was like, I hate Los Angeles. I hate that side of it. But you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm just, and actually it didn't. I went and I made thousands of things while I was in LA. Nobody saw any of them. It doesn't matter. But I went and I did what I wanted to do. I made my own little Hollywood. And then I had to do all of these other things to like make the puppets dance and keep the whole thing going, you know, but I found a way to do that. But I only wanted to make stuff. And I actually was dumb enough to think that LA was run by people who agreed with that idea and wanted to make stuff too, but that's not really how it's set.
It's set up, man, just by like models. It's all models. Like, I mean, I'm sure you heard the story about Netflix and how House of Cards came to be. That was algorithmically determined. They said Kevin Spacey, Steven Soderbergh, like those two need a vibe because our data says that we love Kevin Spacey movies, and it also says that we like Steven Soderbergh. Let's put them together. And what happened is you got House of Cards because political dramas were skyrocketing at the time on the platform.
Which is just an exponentially more absurd idea of what they told you to do in film school, which was you got to have your elevator pitch for when somebody's got you, when you run into someone about your script. Like, it's got to be like, what is this meets this, right? And, you know, you got to, so which leads to my only funny Kevin Spacey story that like is weirdly charged now, like 20 years later after I did it. But I came in, him, Brad Pitt, Edward Norton, Benicio del Toro, and Patricia Arquette all came into a bar, I think, after they were watching one of their play that I was in. And we're sitting there, and I'm sitting there with two of my buddies, and like Ed Norton sits down sort of in front of us, and like we made a couple like snide comments that he overheard, and he turned and gave us like a dirty look. And like we're young in our early 20s, so we finally wrote down in a little napkin and walked up to Kevin Spacey and like handed him this napkin. It said Roadhouse meets Schindler's List on it, and he just laughed after that, and then proceeded in hindsight to sort of start hitting on us. But like, but we didn't know that. We just thought, oh, Kevin Spacey, we're just going to do like the funny thing and share a ridiculous movie idea with you. Because it was so stupid. It was the most absurd thing we can think of. And we handed it to him. But like, that's all the algorithm is, right? Is trying to figure out the most profitable version of Roadhouse meets Schindler's List. And then trying to connect the people into that. And who cares whether the movie's any good?
Dude, Snakes on a Plane.
Snakes on a Plane.
You know, like, yeah. Incredible. By the way, like, this isn't me making a joke. This is dead serious. That's the best movie experience I've ever had. Like, in a theater, period. Because everybody was on the same page. Like, everybody came in. It was like we were going into, like, a big basketball game. And, like, we all knew, right? It was a college town, that we were there to see a dumb movie. And that dumb movie delivered. I mean, like, people were giving it a standing ovation at the end of the movie. Like, imagine that, right? It's like a movie that would arguably be terrible if you watch it by yourself on your couch with like crappy popcorn. But going into the experience, everyone fully bought in, and it was absolutely incredible.
Well, and that's vibe and properly set marketing and expectations. It knew exactly what it was. And look, not everything, you know, the truth is, not everything needs to be art, right? Not everything is about that. Not everything is about elevating the human condition, right? Some things are just junk food, and, you know, you want to eat Sour Patch Kids sometimes. So fine. Like, that's what Snakes on a Plane is. And I love Sour Patch Kids.
Yeah. I got one bad batch of Sour Patch Kids, and I don't think I can ever eat them again.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, man.
I feel like someone spilled perfume on them, like, in transit, and, like, they tasted like chemicals, like raw chemicals. And naturally, I ate the whole bag, even though they were terrible. And that was a mistake on my part. And I dealt with the consequences of that later. So, proof that I'm not a smart person. But yeah, isn't it funny that we went from World War III talking Palestine-Israel conflict all the way to how art doesn't always have to be art sometimes. just going all over the place this episode, which is fantastic.
Yeah, well, you know, but I think it all ties together, right? Which is the underlying theme for me is like, who's funding your propaganda, right? And how did you get tricked into doing whatever the dumb thing was it is that you decided to do? You know, that you would have never willingly chose. Here's another like hypothetical example. Let's remove all the politics from a situation, but think about the number of people, right, who hypothetically choose to go on where all of their friends and family hang out, right, into a place and arbitrarily have like, you know, this is the thing that I know will probably offend or anger a serious bunch of people that I really typically used to like until I found out that they disagreed with whatever this thing was that I'm going to really prove that I'm right about. And I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to stamp it, you know, for all of the world to see. And I'm hoping either one of two things are going to happen. Either I'm going to be universally loved for posting this thing that somebody came up with that wasn't me. And I'm going to put this up like it's a band that I'm behind, right? And I'm either hoping people are going to universally love me and tell me how smart I am for posting this thing that I didn't write or make. Or I'm hoping to find out who the traitors are. And in their hate of me, then I can hate them and potentially unfriend them or find out they're the enemy.
What if you're like choosing door number 3? They're doing it just because, right? Because that's generally why I do those things.
Want to watch the world burn. You know, this is the Joker. You know, like this is.
I'm Michael Caine.
Yeah.
I'm Michael Caine.
Yeah.
Like, dude, like no, but seriously, like part of the reason why I'll do like that action, because I know you've seen me do it before. Yeah. It's like literally because I just want to do this. I just want to see what's gonna happen. Like who's gonna not vibe with this, right? And then I like to engage. Like, oh, why do you feel that way, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to understand. I want to understand, and I feel like you're the same person because I think I've seen you only get mad maybe one time, and it wasn't even about something that was happening in that moment. It was something that got you riled up because you heard something about something else that happened thousands of miles away, and it was about an innocent person. It's like that innocent person was screwed over, and I'm mad about it. But like, yeah, you don't really get mad.
Well, that's not true. But like, I try to not get mad. I try to understand more, like what I'm seeing. I try to understand why I get mad, actually, because I find these like things inside myself where I'm like, wow, you're getting unjustifiably angry. But why are you getting so angry about this internally? What do you need? I try to be my own therapist because I'm like, what is it that just made you so mad about this inconsequential thing that happened or this thing that this person said? Or why does this person's political viewpoint anger you so much? And then for me, it's like my own like fascinating test to like understand my own psyche.
So do you feel like martial arts got you there? It feels like you have mental toughness because like the reality is what you're describing why people are incapable most of the time is they're too emotional and they can't allow themselves to just sit with something, right? It sounds like you have the mental fortitude to sit with a feeling, analyze it, and then execute, right? Like you're literally going through the process of how you drive a car. It's like identify the threat and evade. Like you're doing it in real time.
Yes. I mean, I think there is definitely a high degree of that. And martial arts definitely helps with situational awareness and threat recognition and also understanding how to do something. Discipline really is what it is. But if you really think about it, right? Think about the absurdity of the flip side idea of how you can just scroll through your phone and just get angry.
Yeah. I'm actually stealing this from you, right? like you're not even like scrolling through. You're literally looking at a piece of glass.
Yeah.
You're like, it's an object.
And it's dictating your emotions, right? In real time.
Yeah. But like, there's nothing actually there.
Nothing happened.
It's digital code. And by the way, what's scary, dude, is like that digital code could be altered, right? People don't think about this. Like in a massive like scale attack, right? A cyber attack, you could do essentially what happened with Orson Welles and the War of the Worlds. Have you ever heard this story? What happened on the first broadcast of this?
By the way, how do we know that isn't happening right now?
We're just wagging the dog left and right, dude, left and right. But like for those that don't know, because I don't want to just gloss over this, and the first broadcast of Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, there were some people that didn't know it was a radio show, and they actually believed. And I'm not making fun of these people. They missed the advertisement at the beginning saying this is a show. They actually believed that the world was being invaded by aliens, and like certain people like like killed themselves, like they were looting, they were rioting. It was kind of a massive event. And what Sam is basically planting in my head right now, and it's crazy to think about in real time, is that what if that's happening right now? Like, what if there's an Orson Welles type event?
I mean,
or being steered in a direction.
It happened 20 to 30 years ago. I mean, so do you remember? First off, here's from the 90s, right? I don't know how much you remember the 90s, but there was
Y2K.
Not even that, but like, do you remember the shock and awe campaign when from the Iraq War?
Oh yeah, dude, I remember it was really quickly after
they
9/11.
were playing the same explosions on an endless loop, right, for days on end, as if this was what was happening moment to moment in the actual war. Do you think that's what was really happening in the actual war?
No, now that you're saying this, man, I'm having a lot of thoughts about that because I can see it in my head. It was Baghdad. They had a live camera feed of Baghdad.
Yeah.
Like that's what it was. I remember it. And you're right. It was just Man, you're messing with me right now because I can see it in my head and you're right. You're dead on. You're dead on. That's crazy.
And then we fast forward to September 11th, which whatever you think about that, and there's lots of people with differing opinions. Do you think you know the real story?
Absolutely do not know the real story of 9/11. There's so many questions I have specifically relevant to the Pentagon attack. Mm-hmm. Right? I'll stay away from the towers. I'll leave the towers where they are because there's just not enough information. But there's this is true. This isn't conjecture. Is that David Rumsfeld? Is it David Rumsfeld? I can't remember. It's Rumsfeld. Donald Rumsfeld literally was going to Congress to say we're missing $1 trillion. Whoops. Yes. That is not a coincidence.
Coinky dink.
Because every single camera angle, right? This is the most secure place on the planet. The most secure place on the planet is the Pentagon. Okay, it is. All right. There's not one shot of a plane anywhere hitting that building. All right, so that's one. The only footage is from a gas station that's 5 miles away that has the worst camera in existence and doesn't show any plane wreckage anywhere. It's just okay. So, look, I know that makes me sound like a conspiracy theorist, but the reality is...
It's not a conspiracy theorist because you did not claim that you knew the answer. You simply posed the idea that there's some logical inconsistencies. Can anyone fill in the gaps for me?
Yeah, but dude, it all stems for me is around that missing $1 trillion.
But I'm simply saying, so my point simply, Jason, is I don't know what happened, but back to the original idea of you being fed something in real time that may not be the truth that causes you to feel or do things or have a massive reaction. I'm saying that's not new. That's been going on.
Yeah, man. It started with Pledge of Allegiance, right? I pledge allegiance to the flag, right? You got programmed to doing that every single day. We got programmed by our media. We got programmed to be reactive.
Now, is being programmed necessarily wrong, right? So this is the real question, right? When is program? Mm-hmm. That's actually, I think, the question we've really got to answer because you're being programmed every minute of your life, whether you think you are or not. The world is programming you, but how do you know you're being programmed in the right way? You're going to choose a program.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we just need to give everyone a bell and let them know that they're Pavlov.
So
that's basically what it boils down to.
But if you read, was it Yuri Bezmenov, or you watch this video about this guy who's from the former KGB agent who came over to the U.S. and was oh yeah, so just so you know, they're planning to destabilize you, and it'll be the end of the free world. And what they want to do is demoralize you so that it's easier to destabilize what's going on, and then there's a decline, and this takes 20 years, and there's a whole psychological thing that they're trying to do, right? So if you're not careful, you can do enough navel gazing where you're this whole United States thing, this is just stupid. We're idiots, right? We just colonized the Native Americans and we're the worst thing that ever existed. So hey, Russia, China, we're done. Just come on over. Screw it. It's over. Just lay down. Take it over. We don't deserve to live.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of that happening. It feels like, especially with the U.S. dollar. I'm making a 1-to-1 with people and money, but I promise you, there's a through line. Is like like the GDP is a direct indicator of the health of like society. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Disagree, but go ahead.
No, well, first of all, tell me why you disagree, and then I'll see if I'm.
Because for me, the GDP is just a number, is like a number go up thing they do to like pretend that the economy's doing.
Well, I'll agree with you to a degree, and I'll tell you why. I'll give you my first, point Sam, point Gryffindor. I love Harry Potter. Is that the GDP is very much artificial because it's measured once again on spending as well. And what's gone up more than anything, especially in the United States, is government spending.
Yes.
Right. So it's kind of fake. So point Sam on that. But that being said, on the opposite end of the spectrum is like that's how you can determine whether or not society is productive, right? Even if there is debt, like there does take a certain level of productivity to maintain that debt.
I could support that as like it might be a metric for that.
Yeah, and so I guess what I'm trying to say is like comparing GDP, because that's the metric I've chosen, and how the debt's going up, and we can rationalize that it's going up because of government spending. Is that the dollar's about to be nuked by BRICS, and therefore
maybe.
You think maybe?
I think it might be. I think we're going into a multipolar world. I don't think BRICS is going to suddenly come in and be like, and now we're in charge. I think there's a protracted. We're dealing with competing empires, Jace.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, but I mean, what is the dollar? It's the petrodollar. Like, people throw that around without understanding what it actually means. I know you know what it means, but like, if the oil is no longer priced in dollars,
but it's not the petrodollar, right? Because it's also like there's gold and there's Bitcoin and there's there's
for the Saudis. For the Saudis, yeah.
But like they're playing both sides, right? And you just look at people's interest. Like the Saudis, like, oh, China, we're on your team, and America, we're on your team. And the reason that we're on both teams, and like whatever you need me to say, because I'm playing both sides because I don't know who's gonna win.
Who has the most lithium?
I have no idea.
We need to find that out, Sam, because in my opinion, that's where we gotta be. We gotta be courting lithium people. What's the country with the most amount of lithium? Because that's the only stopgap, right? Well, that's basically what I was getting to. Is like if you can't have oil and you're an energy-dependent country, which the United States currently is, a very much an energy-dependent country. We talked about this last episode. Drill, baby, drill seems to be the mantra of the right because they're trying to solve that. What's the next phase? Is it solar? Is it going to space? Is it lithium?
But I guess what I'm trying to say though is like, what we're really dealing with is the expansion and contraction and disruption of empires. That's what I think we're looking at, right? So if you're looking at propaganda, right? Typically propaganda is the tool of an empire, in some case, a nation state, or whatever it is, to achieve a certain end, right? And I'm just going to throw out, and it can take many forms, right? It can be the Arab Spring, right, where they're trying to bring democracy into the Muslim world, and then everybody celebrates, who's on that side. Meanwhile, you're like, oh, colonization, right? So you're trying to hit the European empires or the European-born empires where it hurts, right? And you're trying to destabilize their hold on their various places, right? So you're going to hit them in the colonization thing, right? Or, China, right? You're gonna go after them when it's autocracy and basically how they're slowly taking over the low-hanging fruit all around the world through the Belt and Road Initiative. But really what we're talking about here is competing empires and how these things push and pull against each other and who is running which empire. And the real question is, all of us have to answer. Currently, we're on the Western Empire, right? That's the one that we're in. We're in the English-speaking Western Empire that plays all of the American music and does all of the various things, right? And the question we have to ask ourselves is like, well, is that the best empire? Do we want to be on the other empire? Which empire is the thing? Or if there's no empire, what does that even mean? And
Yeah.
I don't have the answers to that.
Yeah, I think the answer for me is what has the best natural resources? One, who has the least amount of food deserts? By the way, thank you for turning me onto that because that's important. And third, who's producing the most amount of chips? At the end of the day, that's like the three things that matter to me.
So, well, what's the answer to that question?
I mean, well, we know who's producing the most amount of chips. It's about to be China because it looks like they're going after Taiwan.
Well, the question is, will they succeed?
I don't know. I honestly don't know because it's like, I mean, we're literally at a red line, right? Like, and then someone has to either continue or back off, right? Like, because essentially the only reason China hasn't done it yet is because we've like said, don't do it. I mean, at the end of the day, we're like, just don't do it. And what happens if they do? Are we just going to be like, okay, like, are we going to respond? Sanctions don't work anymore.
Well, I think the reality is we will, right? So that's going to kick it off, right? So then we're going to have another front. If you're thinking about World War III as if it hasn't started, I would simply say, oh, why do we think it's not World War III in the Ukraine? Why do we think it's not World War III in the Middle East right now? And why do we think it's not gearing up to be World War III in Taiwan? And why do we think it's the U.S. versus all this? No, it's the Western Empire versus the emerging BRICS empire, or whatever we're calling it.
See, you're bringing it back to it's BRICS versus not BRICS. That's what it is. And you know me, I don't hate
no, it might be
at all.
NATO versus BRICS.
Oh, there it is. That's actually what it is. It's NATO versus BRICS. That's exactly what it is. Exactly what it is. But the reality is, like, we all know that, you know, BRICS countries have nuclear weapons. That's the deterrent for everyone. That's why this hasn't escalated, because if it does, right?
Well, that's why you have to do a proxy war, right? Where you just give the other country weapons, right? You know, and you pretend that, oh, no, it's not a real war, so they're just going to fight it out with, like, drones, and I don't know how they got those missiles. Whoops! And then, as if the other side doesn't know. It's like this weird, like, bizarre thing. I don't know.
Well, I mean, what's funny about what you're saying, and it's not funny at all, it's actually terrifying, is Secretary Blinken actually had to come out today and say, hey, we didn't know about this Hamas thing that happened in Iran. We didn't know. We didn't know. We had no idea.
Well, this is where I think, look, Israel and Netanyahu's a problem, right? He's a problem. Like, you can believe in Israel and also be like, that dude's...
Are you aware that there was almost a civil war in Israel before what happened?
Yeah, of course. So this is what happens when you have a crazy person in charge, right? So, like, the same way that we could have the wrong leader in the U.S., and that could cause cataclysmic problems for other countries, the same thing is happening in Israel, which is you have the wrong leader in Israel who is incentivized to stay in power by basically starting wars with the surrounding countries, because that's the only way he can hold on to his, like, basically religious right faction, and that's and he's just totally corrupt. So if there's no war, if they get along with the Palestinians, it's certain death for him being in power. So how is he incentivized?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. You just made me realize this is like, was it Louis the 17th? I always forget the number. Louis whatever. Louis, the one that built Versailles. Like, the reason why Versailles exists is so he could basically survive, because if he didn't, it was going to be Marie Antoinette all over again.
That's him. No, that's the whole thing, is how many wars can I start, because it's the only way I stay in power.
Yeah. This is all fascinating. Well, Sam, we have 2 minutes left on the hour. We covered the gamut. I'm sure we offended someone this episode, so if we did,
hey, if you're offended,
we're just chatting.
Let's have a conversation, man. Post a meme about it. We can talk about your meme, and let's get a sense of how you even got to posting that meme, where you being outraged about one of the 1 million podcasts in the world, and you chose this to be the thing that ruined your day. Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, all we do on this podcast is trying to learn and discover and push ourselves to,
and if I'm
familiarize
wrong,
ourselves.
I want to know where I'm wrong, fundamentally.
Exactly.
I won't get angry.
Exactly. Yeah, I tell everyone is I want you to prove me wrong. Like, I don't think people understand that. It's like, I want to be proven wrong, because if I'm proven wrong, it means, holy crap, I actually know what I'm talking about now, one. And two, I don't look like an idiot anymore. Yeah. That would be great.
Critical thinking.
All for that.
Provide me with the truth. If I make an argument that sounds uninformed and stupid to you, lay it out for me like I'm a child, because I want to understand how I got this far off base.
I'll bring you a juice, dude. I want a juice. If we're gonna
have a juice and some facts. Sounds great.
But we're definitely getting a beer afterwards as well, because let's be honest, we're manly men here on Elevate.
It sounds like a plan. I prefer whiskey mostly, or Guinness. Actually, I will have a Guinness or some whiskey. It's
dude. You're on the Guinness kick too? I literally have been going through a phase where I'm just obsessed with Guinness these days.
Well, it's the lowest carb beer, right? Which becomes more important as you get older, let me tell you. So I tend to go with whiskey, but I do enjoy Guinness, and also I'm Irish, or half Irish. So
you're the guy I want to go to Ireland with. I've discovered my mate that we gotta go tear it up one day.
Dude, Ireland is it's one of my favorite places on earth. There's numerous ones,
Me too.
But it is a phenomenal place. Highly recommend Ireland. Big fan. Sounds like a plan.
Yep. My favorite hamburger on the planet, by the way, is in Ireland.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Where's that?
It is Wow Burger.
Wow Burger. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a speakeasy burger joint. It's in a hardware store. So you go into the hardware store and you walk down the stairs and there's a major burger joint underneath it. It's incredible. And the Guinness on tap is way better than what you'll find at what's the big one in Dublin that everybody goes to? Is like, this is the place. It starts with a T, I think. It's like, you gotta go to here. I'll think of it later. But no, you go to Wow Burger. They have the best Guinness and they have the best burger. It's insane.
Okay, noted. I gotta look out for that next time. All right, man, you want to take us out?
All right. Well, guys and girls who have tuned in to this episode, we greatly appreciate it. Thank you for being a part of the Elevate family. And you know what? We'll catch you here next time on the Elevate podcast.
Peace.
Peace.